Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, bots and cons, to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Scott of VectorSigma.info. And Scott, we're finally back from Gen Con. It simultaneously, for me, feels like it was quite literally a few days ago, but also an eternity ago, because there were a lot of things that went on.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, there was a lot of games being played. There were a lot of people. There were a lot of new faces that I met. It was really cool to actually put faces to names and YouTube channels and all kinds of things. So it was definitely very exciting. But I do have a question for you, Scott, before we dive right into things. So when you first got back from the trip, so you got, because you flew and I drove, but when you got back and you got back home, you pulled into your driveway, what was your first thought when you first got back? Was it just going back to sleep?
No, because we didn't do anything on Sunday, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay.
So I just had see my dogs, and I was off on Monday, so it wasn't a big deal. It was basically how am I gonna put everything away, basically.
For me, my wife and I, we pull in, and we got back relatively in the early afternoon, and my first thought was my house looks like something out of Jumanji, because apparently the grass grew to it felt like 8 feet tall. I tried mowing it today and it took way too long. The mower kept stopping. It was bad. So I immediately got thrown right back into the real world after having a whole lot of fun at Gen Con. But it was a whole lot of fun. So I guess to kick things off, I did want to do a couple shout outs, if you don't mind doing the props and slops section at the beginning, Scott.
Sure.
So I wanted to give a shout out, of course, to all my teammates at VectorSigma.info. Scott, you had handed me a deck list that got me a top 8 finish. All the other guys, the patrons, everybody was awesome. We had Watsy on site, so shout out to them. It was great meeting the design team and everybody. It was also awesome to, as I said, put faces to all the other content creators. There are a number of them in our area, but meeting all of the other ones out there, all of the new people. I actually had a bunch of people come up to me and say, your voice sounds real familiar, but I don't quite recognize the face. Are you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm that goon that's running his mouth all the time on Tech Talk. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to everybody, and also a shout out to my wife, who definitely put in extra effort to help and taking care of me this weekend as we were playing some Transformers. So anything along those lines you want to call out before we jump into it, Scott?
No, I mean, it was a good time had by all. The Watsy staff was very open, honest, and gave a lot of their time. We already have an interview up there with them, but I saw other content creators had interviews with them as well.
Yes.
And they were very open with as they usually are, with what they were talking about.
Absolutely.
And were very engaging in conversations. Thanks to Pastime for putting on the event. I know it can be difficult given the just the vast amount of stuff that was going on between
there was an incredible amount of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just the Blaster Soundwave thing having to be on sale, and I know it sold out the first day. I know it didn't sell out all the other days, but
right.
They eventually wound up giving them out for prize tickets, which was awesome.
Yes.
So I have 8 of them. So I mean, that was really cool. Thanks to my teammates, thanks to the terrible restaurants we went to at times.
Some of them might leave something to be desired, which is something to keep in mind for the next go around. But
thanks to the patrons, especially the ones that stayed with us, that it made the weekend better to see a lot of you succeed. Some of that was more satisfying than even on my own finishes, for example.
Right.
Props to all the top 8. Props to Kevin Allen for winning. Props
yes, absolutely.
Top 4, top 8, everyone that made it. And just props to the number of people that played. I mean, we yet again, as expected, it was the largest Transformers event. Each day, the 11 a.m. one of that day was the same one from the Thursday one was the largest event ever. The Friday one was the largest event, second largest event ever, etc.
Right.
It went down from there, but it started out with 78 players in the first one. So
yes,
thanks to everybody who played. It was not easy to make your way into the top 32 of this event, just given the sheer number of players.
Absolutely.
And the new format and all that. So, so it was a good time.
Yeah, there was an astonishing level of both from quantity of players, the quality of players, the people that you had to go through in order to make the big show for the playoff day, as well as get through those playoffs. It was definitely a challenge. So shout out to all the competitors, and like Scott said, definitely shout out to Kevin for taking it down. But before we get into talking about the end of the event, that last day, let's bring it back to Thursday, for example. Or sure. You had gotten in on Wednesday, correct?
Yeah.
So paint us a picture. I know if you haven't seen them already, everybody out there listening or watching, there are videos at end of day recaps that the team tried to put together. I know I'm in some, but not all, and we kind of shuffle people around, but you can definitely check those out for the in the moment thoughts. But now that you've had some time to digest, anything exciting from Wednesday to report?
Gen Con continues to be absolutely atrocious at its badge control and its ticket system. In the year 2019, I shouldn't have paper tickets for events. It's just ridiculous, considering they have an app.
To be fair, it's a tabletop convention, so I guess maybe there is a division between those. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. There's 70,000 people there, so
fair. Yeah, go ahead.
They're definitely making enough money as a convention company to up their technology.
At a certain point, there is also a logistical thing where it's just, okay, this is more efficient to do it this other way.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The construction in the city caused us to take an hour to get back from the airport, and so we have reservations. So we had reservations at 8:00 at night for a restaurant, and I'm like, oh, no problem, because our flight's at getting in at 3:00. What? Yeah, well, by the time you get your luggage, and then all this traffic that was occurring, and then this ridiculous Gen Con line where I couldn't even get my badge until the next morning at 7:30 in the morning anyway, because I had a press badge, but everybody else needed to get theirs, and we had to get our tickets. And I was at the will call, and it's just what are we why is this line so ridiculous? This is just ridiculous. There's just no other word for it. It's just how bad it is.
Yeah, typically for us, my wife and I always end up getting them shipped to us, but because of the way the Transformers events came down, we needed to do the tickets and ended up having to stand in that line. So yeah, it could have been worse for us, at least. We were in line for a while, but it wasn't as obscene as I saw it on some other days where it's stretched outside and around the building.
It's just unreal how bad it is. I just don't understand it, considering the day and age that we're in. It's just unreal. No,
that makes sense. Well, aside from woes in the in the ticket line, anything else exciting come up?
Well, the dinner was good. The Mexican place we went to was good. I mean, we hung out with a bunch of patrons and the team that was there. So that was good. And then we got our Airbnb, which is the first time I've stayed in an Airbnb at a convention. And I got to say, for the money, we were probably a half hour away. But I have to say, for the money, I don't think I'll ever stay in a hotel again. It's just getting your own room and getting your own bed, getting your own bed first, which is a necessity for me.
It's a long way from sleeping in bathtubs when you were a grinder.
Yes. Well, I never. Yes. I didn't, but people have.
Yeah.
No sleeping on the floor. Everyone has their own room. People have their own rooms or own beds at a minimum, own rooms often. I would just highly recommend looking into the Airbnb route instead of the hotel. Even if you're staying in a large hotel room, you're still kind of on top of each other. And here, I didn't feel like we were on top of each other at all.
Yeah, having seen that place, it seemed pretty nice. Our hotel that we stayed in, because I didn't end up staying with the team. Because it was my wife and I, it left some things to be desired. So,
yeah, and if we had decided to go and do this route earlier, I'm sure we would have even a closer, nicer place. So,
right,
I'm definitely going to go this route again. It was definitely worth it.
Awesome. So you ended up getting everything. You get in the room, or you go to eat. You get in the room. Were you guys testing up until the last second? I know you, Scott, probably had everything lined up, but was everybody else still jittery before the event?
I don't think so. I think most of what we kind of discussed was that people were just going to play what they were comfortable with on the first day because it just
Mhm.
we anticipated just. So if you looked on the app, it told you how many tickets were left, and the Thursday morning one was by far the most pre-sold event.
Understandably, yeah.
Of the four, so we just felt like playing whatever you were comfortable with was going to be like the route to go.
Mhm.
So for me, I don't even think I made any. I don't even remember if I made any last-second changes to my deck on day one at all. So I think I just went with what we tested.
Like the true veteran, he knows coming in.
I mean, I was gonna learn. Like, I wasn't testing some. Like, we tested a bunch of the matchups. Like, so it just came down to like being field tested against the what was out there and what people had done with Siege to either update or create decks. So there was nothing more I could really do about it, and I was tired anyway. So because I told you, because I had to lug my luggage around with me this whole time, from getting off the plane until we got to the room. So the Airbnb. So I had my giant bag with way too much stuff in it with me the whole time. So
that could be an issue. I could see that slowly draining you. For my part, I ended up I remember saying in Discord months ago maybe, however long ago that this Soundwave versus Blaster 35th anniversary edition was first revealed. I said I said I knew what I was playing. I don't think I advertised what it was, but I was planning on playing Soundwave or a Lionizer deck, or really a Fire Drive deck, but we'll talk about that another time. It ended up evolving. So at least this time, I didn't do what I've done for a lot of local events, which was I'm deciding what I'm playing quite literally on the drive there, or maybe as I'm at the event sitting down trying to register decks, which I actually saw a number of people throughout the weekend. They definitely had that dilemma of I'm holding two deck lists or two sheets. I'm holding two deck boxes. I don't know which one I'm going to play, and they're about to start in 2 minutes. And that was a position I definitely was making every effort to not be in, especially for something this size.
Yeah, good.
So we made it through at least the night before. The day of, anything exciting before we actually dove into it, Scott, for you guys?
So we had to pick up our badges at 7:30 in the morning because we had press badges. So we drove in. We got dropped off on site, picked up our badges, went to First Watch and had breakfast with a friend of mine that is now going to start playing. But it was Dan, Mark, myself, and my friend John. We had a full-on breakfast. Everything was good. And then because the event didn't start till 11, we had plenty of time.
Yeah.
So we got back to this, filled out our deck list and all that kind of stuff. I actually had my deck list filled out the night before, so we kind of just chilled at breakfast for a while because we just had time to kill until 11. So we didn't turbo or anything like that. So
we had
to get the Blaster versus Sound. We had to get the Blaster versus Soundwave because I thought they were going to sell out. It was going to be harder to get them, so I bought. Dan didn't want his, so I bought two on day one. And so I had to lug those around with me until I left them on the table when I was watching you. But
we were going to bring that up later. We didn't get that far yet.
I had them on me the whole time. So that was because I didn't want to put them in the bag or anything because I didn't want the box to get beat up.
So if for anybody out there who hasn't seen them, the box actually is really nice, and I should have kept it by here, but it actually has G1 style toy art on the back of it, which makes it looks fantastic. Anybody who had the toys as a kid, you're going to appreciate what it looks like. It actually, to me, it looks like a pretty solid display piece almost, but I wanted to play with the card, so I had to crack it open. For ours, it was funny because we specifically, I know my wife had mentioned she went out of her way to say, oh, we're going to get this hotel because they have breakfast. And we go down there and it was literally barren. So we had to scramble from the hotel to get there to try and find something to eat, which is already not a good start to the day for obvious reasons. But we did get there early enough that, we were able to get in line, pick up the Blaster versus Soundwave set, sit down, start talking to people, just kind of relax before the event, which I'll bring it up in a minute as we get into the actual event itself. It didn't help in this case, but it is something that I try and do in general. Get to the event early, make sure I'm not rushing at the last second, try and figure out, we found out that you have to register twice effectively to make sure that you got in the event. So it was good to be there a few minutes early. But I guess without getting too far into it, what did you end up playing, Scott, in the very first event?
I played the range General Optimus deck.
Okay. So you should, maybe by the time this is live, we might already have a deck tech up, but you should expect one if it's not, explaining that deck and the details, because it is a really cool build. But how did that carry you through the event?
I lost my first round and won all the rest.
Nice. So. Sounds like it did okay.
I drew in the last round, obviously, but
right.
I was 0-1 to, I guess it was 5-1.
Okay.
And no games. I don't think any of my games really came down to time. I faced, so like first round I lost to basically the same deck I lost to in the top 4. It was like a Cliff Jumper based Lionizer deck. I think the one I played against was SRB. So like he basically, even though I knew like what I quote knew what the plan was in order to like basically try to take out my Optimus as soon as possible, I was like, oh, I'll just instead of keeping him in truck mode, I'll get him to bot mode to like be more defensive. But he was still able to one shot me because I wasn't set up, so he gave me less time to set up. And then I know I lost that in 3 games, and then like I played, I want to say it's something like 2 bugs, 2 aerial bots, which I thought was pretty random.
There were a lot more of those floating around in general than I would have thought, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, to be honest, the Thursday one, like, even though it had the most players, I would say it also had the most, I kind of just updated my Wave 2 deck kind of situations that I noticed.
Gotcha.
I as the weekend went on and people saw what other people were playing, obviously that changed.
Of course.
I don't remember what else. It's kind of a blur, obviously, but
yeah, you're calling out who you played. I remember very specific matches, so I apologize in advance to all my opponents because I didn't write anything down. And
I didn't write all that down.
And I'm terrible with names, so I apologize in advance. It was great playing everybody, but all of them kind of are running together.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know. Like I said, I know I played 2 robots. I know I played at least 2 bugs, and I know I played at least 2 Lionizer decks, and went. I think yes, that would have been it, and went 1-1 against them, and then I drew. So yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Gotcha.
So it was pretty much like, playing decks. I didn't test against aerial bots, but I know this style of deck is very good against them.
I feel as though you played it a few times before, so you may have had some experience.
Yeah, I played with it a few times, so
just a few.
I knew who my correct targets were. That's for sure.
Okay.
And it provided very bad options for them when their option was basically to attack someone that they weren't going to do a lot of damage to, or attack a battle master that they didn't want to be turned into a weapon. So
in general, you probably don't want to punch those guys if you can help it.
Yeah. No, like when they became superior on it, I'm like, yeah, pitch my whole hand and do all this other stuff, take 27 or something like that. Literally, like, it wasn't very good for them.
I was about to say, did your opponent, I'm assuming that they just kind of sat back and went, well, okay.
Yeah, well, I didn't, wait, that's not the one that has the bold 4? No, sorry. So.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it worked out pretty well for you. So obviously that got you into the Saturday event because of that. For my part in the first event, I ran the same deck through all the events, and as we go through the other ones, I know you changed things up a little bit, Scott, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I actually went 0-2 drop, which was, and this is why I was talking about it or brought it up earlier, that I always like to show up early for events, kind of relax, try and mentally prepare for what I'm going to do, and I just, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't feeling it in the first event. I sat down, it was like, I'm playing, but I don't know if anybody else feels this, but I know for me, there are times where I'm playing and it's almost like an out-of-body thing where I can feel myself not playing properly, but it's tough to get myself back on track. So it was almost, for me, the first event became a warm-up event just to get myself adjusted, because after I did that, I went and got food. I walked through, 2 rows of the dealer hall because there was like 1,000, like 100 million people, so there was no way to get through anything.
Yeah, so 5 hours later, you arrived at the booth you were trying to get to. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I didn't even try to make it across. I basically just went across and went to the other door because there was no shot otherwise.
Yeah.
So I met up with my wife. We went and got some food, just kind of hung out, and then came back. And it, as silly as it may sound for me, it getting practice games, even though I did test the deck, it was just, it gave me a warm-up almost. It was, I kind of, as I was thinking about it, preparing for the show today, the way I would describe it, if anybody played sports either in high school or college or anything beyond, I played football and lacrosse, and one of the things was some of the times when you line up at the first play and you still have a lot of jitters because it's like pregame and you're amped up and you're ready to go, but the first time you get hit in the mouth, you then kind of relax and then you settle into a groove. And that's kind of the way it worked. Like I got my butt kicked and I got hit in the mouth in the first event. And then it kind of settled out as I went into the second one.
Yeah, there was probably also for you, just because I felt this way as well. Like there's just such a desire to qualify right away so that you could relax for the next
Absolutely,
day,
yeah.
For the next night and for like that night. And because it was like, you know, again, some of my friends that weren't playing at the time were like, "Oh, do you want to go to dinner tonight?" It's like I have no way of saying yes or no. Like,
yes,
no way. Because
absolutely.
Like, I don't know if I'm going to be playing in the late one. Like the way it turned out is like I think something like you were done like 3 or 4 rounds by the time we were even able to go to dinner. So like,
yeah,
it was fine, but like it was kind of like that. Like you just couldn't do anything. You couldn't make any mental plans.
Yeah, there was too much uncertainty surrounding it.
Other than just playing. Like that's all. Like you were in. You knew you were in for a long day regardless, and you could have even been in for a longer one if like you hadn't finished like the second one in time and things like that.
Absolutely. So the one thing, and I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but speaking of the later events, if you have the opportunity to go to one of these, I mean, at this stage, it's your store qualifiers or the last chance qualifiers. And to my knowledge, we don't have a whole lot of details as to what that schedule is going to look like on site. But where I'm going with this is, yeah, to echo Scott's point, you want to get that qualification in the early events because let me tell you, even though I did qualify in the Thursday, we'll call it afternoon, even though it finished up after midnight, it started at 4. We didn't finish I don't think I got back to the hotel until 12:30 or so. Point being is the next day I got up to play in the Friday morning one and I was beat. Like I could feel it. It actually helped me, to be honest, a little bit because then my brain wasn't quite going 1,000 miles an hour and it was just, okay, I need to stop, take a breath and focus. But I don't suggest being that tired going into an event. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I would agree.
So you ended up qualifying. Do you know off the top of your head who else had gotten it from that event?
Myself, Mark, and Palmer all qualified in the first event.
Okay. Do you know what they were playing offhand?
Mark was playing cars, traditional cars, with Prow, Wheeljack, and the Bumblebee Trusted Lieutenant, and Palmer was playing the same deck.
As you. Nice.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, I ended up playing Blaster, and you were right. We were 3 or 4 rounds in before you guys were 100% done with everything that was going on. As I said,
there were some logistical issues that caused the round to be delayed. So,
well, there were across the weekend. Again, we mentioned it because of all the things going on. There was just a lot of stuff to take care of. So I ended up. So in the last round, we were trying to figure out whether we could draw in the last round of my event, and it turns out we couldn't because of some weirdness, because of some unintentional draws earlier in the event. And I was lining up against Kevin, our eventual winner, and I ended up beating him there, but he ended up getting in at 8th. So we ended up facing off again later on in the top 32 as a spoiler, but the event went very late. I think our event still had a lot of the aerial bot players, so we had a number of rounds that were going to time. There were a lot of aerial bot versus bugs matchups that went to time, which surprised me to some extent, but it happened.
I'm going to try to find it, but Do you know your ranking in the before you went into the last round when you didn't know if you could draw or not? Do you know your ranking?
No, we didn't.
Before?
I don't believe they. At least I didn't see them post standings. So the part of the issue for us, and just to give everybody a picture of what's going on. So you get intentional draw, and for anybody out there that's not aware, based on the way the math works out in the next to last and last round, generally the higher seeds can draw the last few rounds and then they're guaranteed. In our case, there were, going into the last round, I want to say 401s, a number of X1s, I want to say 6 or 8, and then a bunch of X11s. So basically, if the X11s won and the X1s didn't, or they drew, it ended up being weird so that breakers would determine certain slots. It was very odd. Now, I'm not the one to do that math. That's definitely your territory, Scott, so I'd have to show you, and to be honest, I don't think I have that information.
Yeah, I think the main issue is, the easiest way that I could tell people to do it is, like, if you were in a slot going into the round, you are generally okay to draw and stay somewhere within the top 8. You can get passed by people that would get 3 points somehow.
Right.
But still, generally, like, the safest thing to do is just, like, because I remember in my event, like, I was 5th or 6th and he was 5th or 6th, and we just, like, forget it. We're just going to draw. We're fine. And then, like, I wound up at 7th or something. Like, he wound up at 6th or something. Like, we got passed by, like, one person. Like, it wasn't a big deal.
Right. Now, in this case, especially because the process for the top 32 seeding is still very much a black box, as far as I know. It's
random.
Is it completely random?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that was the case.
Yeah,
I mean, that makes sense, but I was going to say the WotC guys were incredible all weekend with being very forthcoming about a whole variety of topics. I know there were people that were busting their chops about, well, who designed such and such a card? And then whoever it was turned around and goes, well, actually, I did. And it was kind of well, that's a little awkward. And I do want to, okay, on that subject, before we move on, I wanted to point out I was desperately trying to get Matt to sign my blaster because apparently he designed Blaster and he was busting my chops because of some of the things we said before about Blaster when we first reviewed him. So it didn't end up happening because I couldn't find a Sharpie for the life of me, but maybe at PAX, we'll see.
He won't be there, but yeah.
Oh, well, in that case, I guess not. Womp womp. Well, for the future, we'll figure it out at some point down the road.
Yep.
Anyway, so like I said, I ended up qualifying that event and then was super beat for Friday. But there were 2 more events, and we only ended up playing in one. And you did change it up there, right, Scott?
Yeah, I played Blaster.
Now, your version and mine were off by, I think, a few cards, mostly sideboard changes, but a couple things in the main deck. How did it treat you over the course of the event?
That was great.
The deck's fun, right?
Yeah.
The deck is really fun, but it's really good. Like, do you remember what you played against? Like, did you just steamroll everybody and you don't even remember?
No, I played against Insecticons a couple times. I played against Aerobots a couple times. I played against Lionizer decks a couple times. I played against, Dinobots in one round.
Mm-hmm.
I lost to 3-wide Optimus traditional Battlefield Legend, but it wasn't a traditional build, but that's not why I lost. I just don't know how. I mean, I lost game 1 as the 4-wide version, on game 2 when we would sideboard down to the 3-wide version, and just basically, I think we went really long in game 3, and like, because I was on the play, my attacks weren't as optimal, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So, I just didn't have enough good opportunities to actually get at his Optimus before his was suited up, before mine was. So, like,
makes sense.
It just wasn't as good as it could have been. But so I wound up going 4-2, losing, and then I lost a mirror match to one of our teammates. So everything was. I mean, I went 4-2. I was only one match away from top 8ing again. No one on the weekend qualified quote twice. So
no pass downs.
There were no pass downs or anything like that. So, I mean, for me to play a different deck and understand, I mean, I think I mean, you can tell me if you. I know I learned things about the deck, which I hope helped you in the rebuilding of it for Saturday.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah. For sure. That was part of the reason why I had stuck with it, because I felt pretty confident about the deck, but in general, it was, I'm already here. This is the deck I plan on playing on Saturday. I guess I could have not played it to not show more people what it does and how it works. I know there was, and I don't want to take credit for it, but I know there were other blaster builds aside from us, so I don't know if we inspired them or they just said, well, I already queued, so what the hell, I'm going to crack open the Blaster vs. Soundwave and try it. But there definitely were other people running that, although it was also a different squad. So they started 3 wide, for example, if I recall correctly.
Or started Blaster alone or something like that, I think also, right?
I didn't see that one, but I wouldn't be surprised. I know there were a few. The one that I was thinking of, I'm pretty sure, was with General Optimus, which was our sideboard plan.
Sideboard over.
Yeah, but they started with it main. Point being is that I guess I could have taken the route where I tried to hide the information and play something totally unrelated, but I felt it would be more beneficial just to get additional live reps. I mean, we tested a lot with it leading into Gen Con, but there's a lot.
I think you and I defined a lot a little bit differently.
What was that?
I think we defined a lot a little bit differently.
Well,
I made it the last day before we left, basically, before the last testing we had.
Well, we ran. I was running a bunch of other games with it aside from that, but that specific version, yes, because I had other people or other bots in the Fire Drive slot, but it was mostly where I'm going with it is mostly I wanted to get more live fire reps against other people. Just, okay, I'm in an unknown situation. How do I navigate this? Because going into the top 32, at least for me, I saw what had qualified in my event. Excuse me. I saw some of the other things that qualified from other events, but it's still, since you're not married to the deck going in, people could just show up with whatever. So it was very much I wanted to have as wide a breadth of experience as I could.
It seemed like most people played what they qualified with, but I can't say that for sure.
Yeah, I know. I believe Mark has a list of it if Wizards hasn't officially released what everybody was playing by the time this goes live. But yeah, a lot of people seem to go back to whatever got them that far, which I can understand.
Yeah, I mean, and we could talk about this at another date, but the concept of us, of people in general, having to create a meta game in their kitchen table during testing means that you only really have your own information to rely on, because they're as I said numerous times, there wasn't a lot of information publicly available about events that had been going on, and that will likely change as the year, as the months and years go on, as there's just more local events being reported and things like that, or there's, if we have one of these where there's more seasons and things like that, and they run into each other, you'll have more of that. But
of course,
especially for a format that kicked off with a new set like this, I mean, you're pretty much relying on how did your kitchen table testing go,
right?
And so, if you decided this was the best thing you were going to run using a new set's worth of cards, chances are you didn't really have a backup plan. So unless you knew for a fact that you were weak against what other people had showed up with, that you somehow completely missed. It's not like we didn't have Lionizer decks, but we didn't have, we didn't have Cliffjumper Wheeljack Lionizer, for example. We didn't have Lionizer Fire, Lionizer B. Who else would fit in that slot? Cliffjumper, things we didn't have Cliffjumper based Lionizer decks, for example. In our pseudo gauntlet, we just had regular card types decks. So if I thought I was weak specifically against that build, then I would have played something different, likely the Blaster deck. But that wasn't the case, so I just relied on the way I built the deck based on what I thought I was gonna face off against, and because I had done decently against those types of decks on the weekend, I didn't think it was that big of a deal for Saturday.
And that makes sense. I mean, it on both ends. So if it got you that far, like you said, your own personal testing at your kitchen table or your local shop or your team or whatever informed you in a certain way, at a certain point you have to trust the work that you've done. it got you that far, and then there you got to move forward. And like you said, we didn't show up, and there was not a swap parts deck or something like that where it was this came out of left field and it just blows everybody out because it did this weird thing that no one saw coming. A lot of the deck, and I this isn't meant to be derogatory in any fashion towards those decks, but like, okay, it's a Cars deck. Those are things that we've seen. Or, okay, this is a Lionizer deck. We've seen how those interact, those sort of things. The individual quirks and, of course, the pilot skill, etc., factor in, but it wasn't some humongously rogue deck, unless you saw something else there that I missed.
No, but honestly, like, and this is not something I think that has been, again, I when listening back to old podcasts, I know I've hinted at it before, like, to me, even seeing like different like they're not different versions, but like, you know, a 4-wide aggro deck is a 4-wide aggro deck is a 4-wide aggro deck. Like, there's like the way the game is currently positioned, there are just certain strategies you can use to combat what you're facing off against, like whether you're blue or orange, how many characters you have,
right?
You know, whether you're a combiner deck, things like that. Like, even if you slightly tweak the battle deck to like have some tech and to like tweak the characters in some way, shape, or form, you can probably still go into a matchup understanding, hey, during testing, I played this way against this 3-wide deck. Like, you can take the same angle of play and still be like, okay, like, not great, because you might not have seen certain things, but like,
of course,
the general concept still should hold up for a lot of that. So,
and then post board, you can obviously adapt, or if you finish your previous round early, you can see, okay, well, that 3-wide deck like you're describing, oh, that's a weird thing that they just played. I'll keep that in mind going forward, sort of thing. But I agree with the general idea that if I'm seeing 4-wide orange decks across the table from me, or I'm seeing 3-wide blue decks, in general, you're going to take this strategic path and then just adapt that plan based on what they happen to do individually.
Yeah, and I'm the reason I'm very happy with the decks that we played is because I think both of them offered a different line of play than opponents were used to. Like,
oh, for sure.
You know, like the Blaster deck was completely different, where, you know, you start, as you mentioned in the deck tech you did, like, you start tall and you go wide, which again, just that, and coupled with the you have a Battle Master, which is the first time a lot of people have played against them again, out of the kitchen table, offers its own problems. And then with me playing General Optimus, like, as a mixed pip deck, people aren't used to, like, they're not used to when you are attacking with a bunch of guys that have like Barrage with Bold, that all of a sudden it's going to defend for 2 blues, like, because you have Tough on all your guys. I think you just set up or like you have Focus on a guy like that no one else has other than commons that people don't, and uncommons that people don't play. Like, so they haven't they just haven't run into these abilities. Mm-hmm. So I tried to play decks that I thought would give me an edge on that aspect, and I could see people not being used to playing against those types of strategies, at least early in the weekend. So
for sure, there's definitely something to be said for finding those, I don't want to call them rogue strategies, but unexpected ones, where it's just that extra hesitation where your opponent can't go into, like we were describing, oh, it's a 4-wide orange deck, this is my plan of attack. Well, wait a minute, they start 2 and then they become 4. And every time they have to make a decision, are they now second-guessing themselves, which gives them a chance to either misplay and you to capitalize on it, etc. It opens up additional opportunities when you're playing those non-standard things.
Yep. And we weren't the only ones to do that.
Oh, yeah, and I'm not... Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like we're the only innovative people. There's definitely some unique things that showed up. So, off the top of your head, was there anything else that either you're taking back or you're going into the lab with?
I mean, the Cars decks were interesting to me. I mean, what to be honest with you, what really, and I don't think we're going to get into this today, but like, what really impressed me about a lot of the decks, especially like some of the car builds, is I'm on record as saying, like, I think, you know, card advantage and card draw are overrated in this game. It's more about card sifting and getting what you actually want to draw. Mm-hmm. On a turn-by-turn basis. But to me, it was the amount of card draw that existed outside of having to use an action to do it.
Yeah, as opposed to playing Pep Talk. or something
Right.
similar. Yeah.
So that's where the Cliff Jumper came into play. That's where the Fire Drive came into play. That's where Shockwave came into play. That's where, I mean, Pseudo, the Blaster, came into play by being able to play a card off the top.
Yeah, it's a draw, air quotes.
Yeah. That's where, I mean, for me, it was Fire Drive. I always had a grip of cards. Even just by him attacking just once.
It really feels weird, and I said this in the video, not to cut you off, but Fire Drive, you don't realize when you go into your next turn, you go first, you attack with Fire Drive, you go into your next turn, you have 5 cards.
Yeah.
The extra cards it gives you so many more options. It smooths so many wrinkles out. But
it also means you don't have to play if he dies, you don't have to play a weapon.
Exactly. So it saves you.
That card stays in your hand too.
Yep. So it's another hypothetical draw, potential draw that you saved you a play.
Right. Which means to be honest with you, like there might have been a way to build decks with quote less weapons, but that wouldn't have been as effective against blue decks that don't necessarily kill your.
Right.
So for this meta, it might have been more effective to play less weapons. For example, I know my deck was more slanted. I think it was heavier on the upgrade side. I have to check it, but it might not have been necessary. For example,
makes sense.
But what that opened up for me, for example, is just the ability to play just more greens.
Right. Of course.
In that case, so
yeah. You've mentioned your I guess rule of thumb before, where it's number of greens equal to number of potential dead cards, sort of, which makes sense.
Yeah, but definitely some of the card builds that allowed you to draw cards over outside of combat. I mean, they impressed me because the whole reason we played Fire Drive over Lionizer, for example, was because we saw the power of the Piece of Tyranny turn on the Battlemaster.
Right.
As you're giving yourself access to more cards to get to that.
You'd rather have it than not have it.
Yeah, the cards decks did as well. So they kind of mirrored that by just flipping a card that wasn't even the one they were attacking with. Drawing a card off that, and then still having the Lionizer to attack with, for example. It's the same thing, quote unquote, as attacking with the Fire Drive, but then there were other decks that combined both of them together and were suddenly wow, now they're up 2 cards.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely ways I'm gonna work on things like that I think incorporate some of those strategies. And there's also some other characters that I want to build decks around as well that I didn't see there at all.
Yeah. There's still a list of ideas that are on the, I don't want to say cutting room floor because that makes them sound like they're already dead, but they're still in the lab as far as trying to do things. There were definitely some unique things that I played against that were really cool, aside from, what ended up taking down the event or the ones you were highlighting. There was one that I keep coming back to that my opponent was running the blue streak, the red alert, and something else where they relied on trying to find orange, white, and blue pips, but he was shorting the stars intentionally in order to play fuel caches, which is just a cool idea. He had mentioned he didn't have access to Slipstream, so I've been poking around at that. Maybe it ends up just being a Johnny deck where it's oh yeah, it's super cool when it works, but it may be super inconsistent. But it was a unique idea. So speaking of unique ideas and rogue builds and things like that, before we get into talking about the championship day, have your thoughts changed or any other thoughts on the fact that we got the set 30 days before we had to play the event? Because that's what it is looking like right now for PAX, that we're going to get Siege 2 and then bam, we're going to be jumping right into it again.
It's not that bothers me. It's the fact that Origins didn't, and then this did. So I couldn't suspend my Rise of the Combiners base testing, especially combined with the fact that sideboards had just come out. I couldn't stop testing Rise of the Combiners meta to start testing a Siege meta because the Origins event was going to feature the quote old meta.
Right.
So I don't care about the only having 30 days to do the set because I could have printed proxies and things like that to test them, but I couldn't in this situation because I had another event to prepare for.
Makes sense.
I don't think we're going to be able to avoid that, because this is just when Origins and Gen Con fall.
Yes.
But maybe next year Origins and Gen Con will both feature the same meta or something like that, or I don't know, Origins will feature the set meta, and then the equivalent of the Blaster versus Soundwave will come out in between.
Yeah.
And there's some cards that see play and some things that might change. Like, there's that possibility. Like, when we used to play WoW, that used to happen a lot. Like, there was a set that came out for one event, and then the treasure pack or something that came out in between. So
well, Magic, to my knowledge, does that currently, or did in recent history, where it was Pro Tour, new set, and the intent was that, okay, well, this is the first time to showcase whatever these new toys are.
Which I have no problem with. It was just the fact that there was a major event that used the old meta, and I couldn't transition fast.
Oh yeah, I could. So well, there's only so many hours to do the work, so that definitely makes sense. For me, I would prefer if there were a longer period. It also, for two reasons. One, I wanted more time to test, so I would have liked to put in more games with Blaster after we figured it out. Obviously, that wasn't an option because the event was right around the corner. So there's that aspect of and also because I say it all the time, I'm a weaker player than a lot of the other team members, so I need to put in those extra reps. And again, there just aren't that many hours. But aside from that, it also, I get that there are the store qualifier season after this, but the next large event is PAX, which will be featuring the new set. It kind of feels like, oh, here's the big punch for Siege 1, and it doesn't matter for the remainder, almost. I know there will be other locals and things, but I wish there was one other large event so we get, okay, here's all the stuff when people first see it. Okay, now that everybody has an idea and has their footing, how do they adapt? And we get the end of Siege 1 with it.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to hope that the organized play large event, if we have that, that's great. Obviously, I'll take more large events.
Of course, yeah.
But you have to understand that feeling that you have is unique to those of us that qualified and were able to play at Gen Con, which is not a majority of them.
Right. And I recognize that.
Events, they're not. It's not everybody. So
yeah.
For them, the store qualifier season is the equivalent of what us playing at Gen Con, except for now they actually have more information under their belt.
Of course.
So I think what they're doing with this is purposeful and is fine. I'm good with it. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, that would just mean we just have to have more large events, which would be fine by me.
Oh, by the way, hey, Wizards, just have more stuff. Why not?
Right. Fine by me.
Yeah.
But I think that feeling is simply because we're qualified and we get to relax. But that's not the case for most people. So
right. And it quote relax is accurate because I actually tweeted that out after after I was eliminated and I had a little chance to settle down. I tweeted out okay, I finished top 8, but now the real work begins because now it's okay. I kept saying the big show for all of the elimination day events at the Opens, but now it's the big show for us where we got to prepare, and I got to kind of restrain the excitement because it's also, we got to wait for the rest of Siege 2 to materialize so that we know what we're getting ourselves into.
I just think players, and I know I have heard other players that have that attitude. I know there are players that didn't go to Gen Con because they were already qualified and things like that. I think that's a mistake. I think that there are, there was a game that my first round with Blaster, I forgot to flip him one turn and I never got out the second cassette, for example. There are technical plays that you have to make no matter what deck you're playing that have to become muscle memory if you plan on performing well at a large event. And so taking off this season and not supporting your local area and not playing in the qualifiers because you're qualified, to me, is a mistake.
Well, that's something else to bring up to kind of segue from there, is that supporting your local scene is important in this off season. I know we were talking about it offline before the show, and we've mentioned it in various team chats that we all want to support our local scene, and I'm upset that I don't know if I can make this one. At the time this goes live, it'll have already happened, but I want to, even though I just played, I want to go to another one. I want to play more, and it's important to show that enthusiasm. And because of the way, as we understand it, the pass downs and things go, is that you're not hosing anybody.
Right. And like I said, the game itself is very, I mean, we talked about this, and you can check out our interview with Watsy. The game is can be technically difficult. Like, so
Yeah.
you want to get as many reps, especially like if you're used to playing one deck and you want to play something different. Just to
Oh,
get
good
used
Lord.
to, like,
Even just going
Yeah.
like 4 wide orange to 3
Right.
wide orange, like it changes the whole outlook of matchups.
Yep, exactly. It doesn't mean you should like intentionally play something you feel is worse, but
Well,
like
of
get
course.
reps with other things that you think are playable, and like because chances are something may only be a few cards off, or you may discover it during the season. I mean, we discovered these decks pretty late in our testing.
Right.
I want to say like maybe a week to a week and a half before the event, where
Right.
we really said, okay, we think these cards work, but here, because I'm weak against this, I'm going to adjust the deck in this way.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I feel like you can. I get what you're saying about like our meta is over, but it's not. Like the store qualifier season meta, I'm hoping we see evolve
Oh, of course.
over
And
the next 2 months. So
I'm expecting it to, but that was my
Yeah.
disappointment that there isn't a. Obviously, excuse me, people are going to travel to their store events, and hopefully you get large numbers. I would be surprised if a local store pulled 80 to 100 people, kind of thing.
Same.
And that's why I guess it came out worse than I intended. I'm just disappointed that we can't have Gen Con 2 in early October, where it's now, okay, we had Gen Con, we had all the store qualifiers, now here's another big event to showcase everything again. But that's real life. You can't have everything you want all the time.
No, I mean, we just have to hope that these events have good results, and
Right.
I mean, all our indications, everybody's happy with the turnouts, everybody's happy with the performances and everything like that. So
Absolutely.
that it can grow in future years. So
Yeah. So it's going to be exciting going into PAX. It's going to be exciting in the remainder of this season to see how things evolve, because as you were saying earlier, Scott, this is only the surface, the tip of the iceberg, other cliches that we have seen from this meta. And I expect now that people have that information, the store qualifier season is going to get real interesting real fast.
Agreed.
So moving from there, because I kind of derailed everything with that whole discussion, we've now gotten through the first 2 days, or first.
Wait,
day.
are we at Friday dinner, or are we at?
I get. Well,
Saturday?
are you going to tell the Friday dinner story? Is that where you're going with this?
No, we went to Yard House. It was much better than going to other places. So
Mm.
we wound up spending like 3 meals at Yard House. It was a good place to go.
Yeah, shout out to Yard House in Indianapolis. My wife and I go there every year because we love that place. It's actually really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went out to eat after the event, went over a whole bunch of stuff. That was the night I think I came back with you guys to record.
Yes, and
So-
by that time, everybody was qualified.
Yes.
So, yeah. So,
And it.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. If you were at
No,
something else.
a couple of our patrons got qualified at the last event overall
Yes.
when we were eating, but we did a team dinner that night, and so like everybody at dinner was already qualified, so there's not a lot of pressure on us from that.
Right. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just a matter of, well, you guys got back to the Airbnb. I didn't get back until 1 o'clock in the morning again because I had to drive to the opposite end of the city. But them's the breaks. It happens.
You drove us back.
Yeah, because we had a very funny experience with what Mark set his prize tickets on fire for with those ridiculous sodas.
Jones Soda. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if you're not sure what we're talking about, definitely go check out the videos because it actually is legit funny.
Live on the podcast, text from Wizards. Congratulations on earning a prize of the 2019 TCG Open Indianapolis. Wizards of the Coast has credited your e-wallet account.
Nice.
There you go. So live on the podcast,
Nice.
the prize comes in.
Pretty quick. They're
Yep.
It's like they know what they're doing or something. They're pretty good at this. I've heard word on the street, the rumors. So where were we as we got sidetracked by that? Oh yeah, we're talking about
We're on Friday night.
yeah, Friday night with Mark's ridiculousness at the recording there. So after that, you and I were talking about last minute changes to the blaster deck. You were making some last second changes potentially to the General Optimist that you were going to run the next day.
You can see those blaster changes on the video if you look very carefully.
Were they?
They're on the table in front of us.
Mm.
I don't even know if you can. I don't think the camera's tilted where you can see every
actually
card.
make it out.
You can definitely see I'm laying out blaster card.
Right. The I ended up taking most of the advice. I think I ended up 1 or 2 cards off on the board, and then definitely changed the main deck to suit what we both observed over the course of the previous 2 events, which was another advantage, and specifically why I wanted to run it so many times, just to, okay, this is working, this is not working. Again, just more testing.
Yeah.
Other than that, everybody. So you ran General Optimus, I ran Blaster, Palmer ran General Optimus as well. Dan played
General Optimus.
General Optimus. Okay.
And Mark decided in the.
What was that, Scott? You broke up.
Mark decided in the morning to run Insecticons. Everybody else ran General Optimus except for you ran Blaster.
Yeah, I know he was debating between Insecticons and Cars, I believe, which.
Yep.
It ended up he drew, going back to the random pairings for top 32, he just drew a rough matchup, so didn't work out there, unfortunately. So I guess, I'll hand it over to you, Scott. Regale us with the story of your top 4 dive.
So what? My whole match, like everybody I played.
Well, give us the overview, because I'm sure here's the other thing, everybody out there listening and watching. There's a lot to unpack from Gen Con. So while we're not covering every detail, don't worry. We have a lot of decks and a lot of strategies and things to cover, and it's just we kind of want to do the general idea of Gen Con for this one. I should have said that at the beginning. My bad.
No, I played Insecticons the first 2 rounds, which I built the deck to be stronger against than other 3-wide decks on purpose. Then I played the Wheeljack, Cliffjumper, Lionizer deck in the top 8 and won, and then I played the same deck in top 8 and lost, and that's on stream. You can watch me. I've played it over my mind many times, and I think I did it as best as I possibly could.
I was about to say, we spent like 2.5 hours talking about literally one play, I think.
There's a way I could have done it differently that would have. I don't want to be results oriented, but it would not have changed. The results of the match would not have changed if I had played it. It's not better. I think it's just differently. If you were to watch the top 4 stream, I had an option when Fire Drive died to put it on Optimus or on Barrage. I chose to put it on Optimus. Swing with Optimus, expecting him to survive with the reflex circuits on, but he attacked me for 19 and I died anyway. So
yeah, that. What are you gonna do there? I mean,
if he attacked me for like 17, I would have
right
19. If it was, I think it had to be 18. So if he attacked for anything less than 18, I was fine, and I figured I can probably survive this. But the issue is if I put it on Barrage, then Barrage just gets eaten automatically, and then we're down to the same situation again. And it just becomes, instead of Barrage versus Wheeljack 1-on-1, and I don't kill him in one hit, it becomes Optimus versus Wheeljack 1-on-1. I can get him with the same 2 cards, Optimus off the bat up to 14.
Mm-hmm.
Where I need to do, what is it? He flipped 2 blues, so I had to do 16, and I would have done 15. And with the Barrage, I only did 14, and that's why he lived.
Gotcha.
But if it was the Optimus, I still wouldn't have got there because he flipped 2 out of 3 blues he had. So, like, results oriented, it wouldn't have mattered. So I still think my line of play was correct. We just both did insane amounts of damage to each other in the first few rounds. The games were over in like 5 minutes. So
yes, that's definitely true.
It was a great match. William was a great opponent. Like we were. I mean, it was a very friendly match. Like it was very fun and like very laid back. Just like, hey, it is what it is. Like there was like it was like we both the Battle Masters were both drawing a bunch of cards. Like it was kind of like we're both just playing our own game. There was no like
right.
My draw was terrible and your draw was terrible because we both drew so many cards that like it was just kind of
leveled everything.
Yeah. So, it was definitely my worst matchup of the 4 in the top 4. Like I would have much preferred to play either of the other 2 because I feel like I built the deck to be stronger against 4-wide decks, given the amount of burn that I had in the deck.
Gotcha.
And the amount of blues that I have in the deck. But like, it is what it is. Like it was definitely my worst matchup out of the 4. So.
Right. Makes sense. One thing that came up, so after I was eliminated, so they put everything on stream at top 4. My wife came by because she was checking in after one of her events because she was off playing in a different tournament or a couple different other tournaments, and she had brought me food. So I'm sitting there because I was ready to pass out. I was so hungry. I was stuffing my face with Taco Bell as I watched like the entire Transformers crowd disappear into behind the curtain where they had the top 4 set up, and then 5 minutes later, they shuffle everybody back out because they didn't want any of the players in there. But it was cool that they had one of the WotC team members as well as Stefan. Is that Jamie from Powered by Primus was the other guy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him, and I didn't get the chance to introduce myself, so I know of him. But it was cool that they had players casting the matches as well. And I hope they continue that going forward.
Agreed.
Yeah, it was definitely cool to have that level of participation for this level of events. So,
and I'm more than willing to do that commentary if I'm not Wizards, in case you're listening.
Yeah, yeah, I think we all would. I think we all want a chance in that limelight because that seemed really cool. So, for my part, I played Shockwave, a 3-wide Shockwave variant. Long story short, I have a lot of press the advantages. So.
Yep.
You can kind of surmise where that one went. Then I played against teammate John Palmer. As Scott had said, he was playing General Optimus. And I went into the tank for a very long time because on turn 1, I flipped a piece through Tyranny. Obviously, I didn't play the piece through Tyranny, and this will be something that we probably get into because you have brought up some stuff, Scott, as well, that when we do our third part of our tournament prep and evaluation series of how we look back at this event and which plays, which strategies, which things did we do or not do that influence things. And one of the things is learning from during the event. And earlier in the event, I had missed a piece through Tyranny play. So basically, after that match, every time I saw a piece in my hand or I flipped it with a blaster or I had a chance to play it, it was, okay, hold on. I'm going to take a minute and figure out, does this actually make sense? Turn 1, it doesn't really make sense. But it was definitely a moment of, I need to run through this and see if I'm going to set up something good or not. And then ultimately after that, I was eliminated by the eventual champion, Kevin. Again, congratulations there. I had played him in the earlier qualifiers, and all 6 of our games were ridiculous. They basically always came down to the last turn. I ended up making 2 significant misplays in that top 8 match, which cost me in game 3, of course. So it stings a little bit, but I know what I screwed up, so hopefully I can fix it going forward, which is the silver lining, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, as part of the evaluation going forward, and we'll talk about this when we do that show, is just being able to pinpoint those things and what caused them, how did they happen, and most importantly, how do you address them going forward? But again, topic for another day.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, we went and got food with, I don't know if you want to tell the story. I hesitate to say we got food because I feel like we could still be waiting now for that food to come. It was bad.
You know what pisses me off is that they canceled our reservation even though we eventually used it, so I didn't even get my open table points, which pisses me off, I think, more
Wait,
than anything
what?
else. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that. Oh, God.
Because what wound up happening was when our friend changed the reservation from 6 people to 8 people and they wanted to back it up 3 hours, they wound up just using that one instead of mine.
I gotcha.
I didn't get the open table points, which pisses me off even more, to be honest with you.
Unfortunate.
Just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the place, but I'll be honest, I'm gonna stick to the Yard House when I go to Indy.
Oh, I do. It's the Weber Grill.
Okay. Yeah, it was. It did not go well at all. It was an unmitigated disaster. Is kind of the way I would describe it.
Well, let's see. We got our reservation was at 8. We got there at 6. We walked back to the hall to turn in tickets because I wasn't going to be there on Sunday. Again, that's where I picked up all the Blaster vs. Soundwave, so thanks to Pastimes for putting those available.
Yeah.
We walked back. Our table still wasn't ready. And now, in fairness, like I said, our reservation was at 8, but we thought, hey, we're here 2 hours early. Can you fit us early? No problem. But then the amount of food that was missing pre and post order was ridiculous. So my recommendation for Gen Con dining, if you're going to take this, is go super high end or go the Fridays Hula Hands level. Don't do anything in between.
Yeah. The
Yard House is fine. You're going to pay $20 plate, no problem. Or go to like Butcher and Singer or St. Elmo's and like one of the steakhouses and pay $50. Don't pay $35. It's not worth it.
So you're saying, what about the food trucks, Scott? You're not a fan of the food trucks?
I mean, did they exist? I don't know. I saw a coffee truck when we walked.
You didn't see?
Oh, I saw.
Did you really not see the food trucks, like literally right out the front door?
Was there daylight during that period? Because I only thing I ever walked out of there was for dinner.
See, we always get the parking garage that's literally right across from the convention hall. So as we're walking in, we always see them. And I got my island noodles like I do every year because I make a point to do that. I got it on Sunday because Sunday was the relaxation day for my wife and I, where we casually walked through the dealer hall that still took 6 hours because there's a bazillion people, and we got to hang out.
That is one thing we didn't mention. Like, so Saturday interview with Watsy, and we had our time wrong, so we had plenty of time in the morning. And then we went to go get quote lunch, and then we actually tried to walk the dealer hall. That didn't work because it was a mountain of people. And it's kind of disgusting, and they need to cap this at some point because you just can't even move.
Yeah, there was definitely points where there's just a gazillion people. It's strange to think about how big that convention center is, and it's like, wow, there's still that many people that it's wall to wall people.
I mean, like, I was ahead of you by like one person, and then suddenly it was like 5 people, and then it was like 10 people by the time we got like.
Yeah, it's very much just a stream of. Yeah, exactly. So basically for you only got to see, I guess, outside of Transformers, you didn't see much of the show over the course of the weekend. Is that correct?
No, not at all.
Yeah,
because but I purposely didn't want to go back on Sunday. Like, so I got my flight at 10:30 in the morning on Sunday. So like I knew that wasn't going to happen because. I guess I should say I also consciously made the decision to play on the Friday one, even though I used my own advice that we talked about on the podcast. Sign up for all 4 events up front. Thanks Pastimes, I was able to get my refund, and thanks Gen Con for the events I didn't play in. But like, sure, I could have not played on Friday and walked the dealer hall for hours upon hours and probably made it 10 feet. But I chose to play again. So that would have been the best opportunity because we weren't done,
of course,
usually by 6. So like I couldn't get back to the dealer hall. I'm not playing any other TCGs right now. I don't play board games competitively, so I wasn't like there to test games and things like that. And honestly, like the day just kind of flies by.
Oh yeah,
and, like,
for sure.
And I've said this before, like I'm there to do what I'm going to do. I don't care that I'm at a convention. I mean, obviously it's convenient for everybody else that like there's other things to do, but that's not me.
Yeah.
So what I did with other things was hang out with friends that I have from years past that at the time were not playing Transformers and got to see them, people from other games. Like that was my non-Transformers experience, was seeing friends that play other games and talking to them more than it was like trying other things.
Yeah. Yeah, I did run into a bunch of people from other games or years past that we cross paths in the exhibitor hall, or we cross paths in the actual CCG hall, or my wife could officially say that she won a game on Lucas Oil Stadium Field because she was playing out there, which was pretty cool. So we did end up, for us, like I said, we went through the exhibitor hall and tried a bunch of stuff, kind of just do a wind down for the weekend, because obviously, as we were talking about leading up into it and then actually playing in the events, there's a lot of like building up tension, and then it's just, okay, you can decompress now that the event is officially over.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how your Sunday was, but
yeah, it went pretty smoothly. Like I said, there wasn't anything exciting. It was demo this, try that, take a look at this thing. Oh, that's a cool set of sleeves or something that I might want to pick up. Swing by the BCW booth to pick up more top loaders, things like that.
Yeah.
So I guess as a whole for the event, anything that stood out to you? So, for example, in or at Origins, one of the big concerns was time and draws. There were draws and games went to time, but do you think that the community is following the pattern that I guess Wizards was trying to set forth of hey, you just got to learn, play faster.
So the format is more orange based, which helps not have as many draws currently. That's one thing that is like, but it's not a like coincident causality thing. It's not that.
Mm-hmm.
The games that did go to time, from what I just actually heard people saying, because I wasn't, some of them was like, there was an air of inevitability where it was like, why are we going to play these two turns out? Like, we know it's going to be a draw.
Right.
There was like, because we weren't going to life totals because it wasn't in the elimination rounds, that didn't exist. So it seemed like, except for a couple of exceptions, the matches were inevitably going to be draws. So it was like, okay,
Gotcha.
We're not done, let's just draw. And that was it. Like, that was the end of it. So like,
right.
The rounds past time didn't really go that far. The other thing is, I felt like I always had like time to shuffle up and deal that I didn't have at Origins, where it was like, pairings are up and the round started. That was what happened. Like, that did not happen here. So there was definitely a much better job there.
Mm-hmm.
It was easier to find my pairing because they had like all the information, so you could look. If you knew your DCI number, you could find it that way. If you had your last name, you could do it that way. So that was smoother.
Well, for you, it was easier. For us that have like 12-digit DCI numbers, yours is like 3. So yeah, it kind of stands out.
Yeah, it's easy. But no, like, time wasn't an issue for me, and really for anybody. Like, there was a couple notable exceptions.
Of course.
But in general, like I said, the air of inevitability seemed to be with, we're going to draw, let's just draw.
So people...
Not like...
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Not like I'm going to go in some tank and like I get to attack with one character. I'm obviously not going to kill your 3 guys remaining.
Would you say then that just in general the community is adapting, and because they've now had... At the time, they had a competitive level event under their belts collectively. Obviously, the specific faces may be different, but even the spectators who couldn't make it to Origins, if they went to Gen Con, they at least had the opportunity to say, oh, well, that's how that mapped out. I'm going to be more prepared going in. Do you think that had an impact at all?
I would have to think it did. I don't have any proof that it did, but it seems that way. Yeah.
So aside from the time and draws thing, which again was a big topic from Origins, was there anything else that stood out to you in general, whether like anywhere across the board? I know we talked about the decks and how the meta is going to shape up a little bit, and we'll talk about it going forward, but anything else jump out to you from this event?
If we're not going to talk about meta and decks?
Well, I mean, if you want to go that route, but I mean, we're obviously going to get into it more in future episodes.
There's a lot of Autobots. Way too many.
Yeah, there's a lot of Autobots. I wonder why.
Yeah. There's certain cards that work well with Autobots, and Decepticons don't have the equivalents.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very orange-based meta.
But I expect that to change as people get acclimated to what there is.
C.1.
Mm-hmm.
So it might not change if we don't see .1.
Well, yes.
There wasn't much. I mean, the cry was to ban. I mean, there was. How do I put this?
You trying to be cautious? All right, take a second.
How do I put this in a nice way? The players at the event, like, there wasn't, for example, a lot of like Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend yet in periphery media at the same exact time the event was going on. There was discussion about banning him, which was a hilarious terribleness to me because he wasn't heavily represented at the event, so I don't know what you're complaining about. But that did surprise me because
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
He didn't even show up as much and as often as I thought he would, like in the Lancer type build. So, like, I would just say, I mean, he showed up in a lot of sideboards. Like, we sideboarded him in 3-Wide Optimus, for example. Mm-hmm. I think I sided into or maybe like 3 times a weekend.
Gotcha.
So like that surprised me a little bit, but I think that's still like the orange bias. I mean, I know people did qualify with 3-Wide Optimus, but I'm not sure the deck got that much out of the set.
Right.
I think there was a decent amount of siege cards that were. I mean, definitely.
That's
on
true.
On the character side, especially.
For sure.
the 7-drop Battlemasters showed up as I expected them to do. And not a lot of other Battlemasters showed up. Like, I didn't see a single Smashdown. I didn't see a single Night Heat. I didn't see a single Cog. I didn't see a single...
I saw Aimless running around, but he didn't...
He's 7 cost, so he counts as, like, the rest.
Okay, you're lumping him in there. Okay, yeah.
He was the least played of the 3, but...
Right.
The 7 cost Battlemasters, the other ones just didn't. No Traxodon.
I saw Ultra Magnuses and Shockwaves. I don't believe I saw Cog. There might have been a General Megatron floating around.
On Thursday, there were Megatrons, but that was the only time I ever really saw them.
Gotcha.
There were no Firecons. There were no...
Well, yes. As much as I wanted them, I really, really wanted them, but I forget who said it first, but I think we all kind of echoed the sentiment of, like, why don't you just play Dinobots? But...
There were, like, no Captain Starscreams. There were no...
I did see one, and I remember, I think some of the photos, like, the game over from the photo, somebody had a King Starscream in play, I think. But yeah, it was not making a big splash.
Oh, there were no Micromasters that I saw at all. Except, like, in Soundwave decks that did not do well, so...
Yeah, I don't remember seeing any.
So yeah, I saw no Micromasters there.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. They're one that I would put in the category of, if they're going to succeed, they probably needed more time in the oven to figure it out.
Yeah, it's just a different play pattern that people would need.
Exactly, yeah.
There were Metroplexes.
Yes.
There were no... I mean, I know they were there, but I didn't see it. And well, apparently somebody said that a Menasor almost qualified, but I don't know how.
I know there was...
0.1, but...
Really? Because I was going to say, I know there was a Menasor, but I forget which event it was, but I thought whoever was running it got thrashed, but I could be wrong.
This is what I heard. I don't know. There remain no combiners outside of Aerobots. There was, like, no Dreadwing. There was no...
Yeah.
Constructicons. There was no... I mean, when I say no, I don't mean literally was running. I mean, like, not...
They very quickly didn't end up at the top tables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No Predacons, no Dreadwing, no
Sentinels.
There were no Sentinels, which surprised me. But I mean, even being played as a non combiner, obviously, there were no Sentinels, which was a deck that was in the Rise of the Combiners meta.
Right.
So of the decks that were in the Rise of the Combiners meta, I would say that was the one that surprised me, didn't show up hardly at all, but I think it just kind of gotten replaced by the Cars decks.
Probably, yeah.
Because basically the Battlemaster set up a similar situation to having those free in the scrap pile. Like you get something eventually that you didn't have by getting the weapon. So I think that kind of just replaced that. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I thought Siege was pretty well represented. What was there,
right?
And I still think there's more room to be explored.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was pretty impressed with the amount of decks that were out there from that set.
What he said, because that's pretty much how I feel. No, that's perfectly fine, because I did see, like I said, a lot of interesting things. Some of them look like they had potential, and maybe, a play error here or a deck change there. Maybe they're going to go somewhere. Other ones, maybe not so much, but it was definitely good to see all of the... And I think even the WotC guys had commented that, I don't remember if they specifically said in the interview, but that there was such a wide variety of things, that there were people trying different things. And like you said, that Siege was making a splash, which you'd kind of hope going in, that it's like, okay, I want to try the new stuff.
Yeah.
So it definitely worked out on that end. So that kind of covers the high level for Gen Con 2019. Obviously, as I mentioned, we're going to dive into a whole lot of other details as in the coming weeks and months as we talk about the spoilers that are coming up, or how they interrelate with the things we saw, or how certain decks are evolving through the store qualifier season. But there's still a lot of things to unpack from this event in particular. And we'll be getting into more detail as we move forward. So we're currently sitting at, I think, about an hour and 20 or so. Scott, do you feel frisky enough to dive into the spoilers, or do you want to save them for a future episode?
We should save them, I think, for a future episode.
Sounds good to me. So we'll leave those our thoughts on Triptychon, and today was Hot Rods, so we'll cover those at a future date. But for
we do have the spoilers up at all the spoilers up at VectorSigma.info. I changed the Wave 3 link to be Siege 2. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I should have called that out earlier. It's a good point bringing that up. So for all of your spoiler update needs, you can definitely check out VectorSigma.info to keep up to date on the Siege 2 Wave 4 cards that are coming out. So I guess that kind of does it for this episode. For Scott, for myself, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And please tune in next time for more Tech Talk.
Hey guys, Dan here from VectorSigma.info. We wanted to take this moment to thank all of our patrons for believing in the service we're providing. If you're not yet a member of a Patreon, feel free to click on the link for other podcasts like this one, or verse videos, or any of the other great content that we provide on our YouTube channel. Thanks, guys.